lands of my people, ngā ariki kaiputahi. Within the lands of my people there is a house. And that house is our ancestral home, and that is called mangatu. And within the house there is a po, we call, or a pole, which stands and holds the house up. That's my tipuna, and his name is Rawiri Tamanui. From Rawiri Tamanui, he had a son called Pera. Pera had a son called Tehira. Tehira had a daughter called Ruahine Kino. Ruahine Kino had a son called Kupukore. Kupukore had a daughter called Moitu. Moitu had a son called Owen Lloyd, and Owen Lloyd had a son called Marcus. And so that's who I am. From my father back to Rawiri Tamanui is 7 generations. And so if I were to go back through my genealogy, it would be here for 2 days. And I don't want to do that for you. But it's important that I understand it and I know the origins that I come from. So just quickly, with the 7th Generation Fund and my appreciation for being able to be here and paying my respects to, don't want to get the names wrong, Tongva and Ahashma. I'm grateful that they've allowed us to come. And we went to the beach for the opening ceremony and got to share in the rain that came with it and the refreshing that was there. So I brought my flag because it's important to me. This is me. You know, I can't separate myself from this anymore. And where I go, my flag has always come. It's not my flag, it's the flag of our modern day understanding of who we are as a Māori people. So thank you for letting me come. Thank you for allowing me to present to you. I want to get rid of a quick couple of formalities. The first one is, everyone got a phone? Please take your phones out and turn them on. This is the opposite of what you usually hear. And if you wish to, all of what I'm going to say is on my Facebook page, and you're more than welcome to go on there and to friend me. I'm getting a little friendless, so I need some more people. So that was my whole ploy, was just to get some more friends. So you can find me under Marcus, Makawhero, or Lloyd. So I uploaded everything I'm going to talk about today. The principle which I'm talking about is digital natives and data sovereignty. And so I live by the principle. Now, it's a world where, you know, I cross into virtual space as well as into physical space. Sometimes I don't think that's that different to my ancestors. The spiritual space, to me, is very similar to the virtual space, the quantum space. I hope I don't geek out too much, and I'll try and get through what I can real quick. But feel free to access and take a look at whatever I have, including anything else that you like. I'll disclaimer. I'm going to put a disclaimer out there. So, to get into it first of all, a bit about my background. So I grew up a young little Māori boy, right? So here I am at school, and I'm sitting at school and the teacher says, all right, all you Māoris, can you please put your hand up? And I never put my hand up. And the teacher says, oh, Marcus, aren't you going to put your hand up? And I says, why, I'm not a Māori. And she goes, oh, yes you are. You know, oh, am I? And that was the first moment that I had been identified, stereotyped as a Māori. Up until that point, I was Marcus. I had no idea that I was Māori. I was cultural. I was engaged in my culture, but I hadn't had an identity placed upon me. So thanks school for doing that. That was the first of many other situations which I would become sort of labelled as a Māori. So that was a shock. However, I grew up in the city. So I never grew up on our tribal lands. I never grew up connected to the culture. And as you saw with my sister and my niece, and well, my sisters and my niece are very competent in our culture and in our singing and in our ways, and I'm not very competent at all. I'm one of those lost generations. So I grew up not knowing the language, not knowing anything about my history, my genealogy. I'm one of the latecomers. I've just come to this space. I think that has an advantage because I get out of a lot of things too. I've got an excuse, oh, I don't know what to do, but that's no longer an excuse. My background, I think I'm just like any typical Māori male. Dropped out of school at 16, moved 1,000 kilometres away from my family, started working, and then started working for some people on the side, and started to work for myself in that sort of industry, and then reached the point where I thought I should take some protection because the work that I was doing was not legal and it was not safe. And then I was challenged by a friend. He says, would you be willing to kill for what you do? If you are, carry on. If you're not, you might want to think about your future. So I spent a week, it took me a week to decide, and I realized that I couldn't go down that path. It's the path that Brian was talking about. But that put me in a dilemma, because I was very ambitious. I had a very strong plan about what I wanted to do. I was going to become the other side of the law, but I was going to be good at it. I wasn't just going to be an amateur. I was going to be successful at breaking the law. And then when I decided that I couldn't take everything that came with that, then I became less than that. I had no plan, I had no vision, no purpose, and became a very heavy user, and probably became the very statistics that many of you are already familiar with a lot of Indigenous male populations. Thankfully, the great Creator had another plan in store, and so He brought about the conditions for me to have a motorcycle accident, and I broke both my arms, spent 2 weeks in hospital, and then 6 weeks in casts. And I couldn't do anything because they were full arm casts, so I couldn't bend my arms. I couldn't do nothing. And it was the most helpless feeling I had because I had to allow others to do things for me. So that was really a humbling experience. But it humbled me enough to start asking the questions about, okay, who am I? Where do I come from? Why am I here? And what's important to me? Thankfully, one of my nannies, you see, the nannies are the most powerful force in all indigeneity, if you ask me. The nannies are the ones. She grabbed me by the ears and she said to me, what are you doing? By this stage, I had begun to move into the internet industry and I was doing some really cool stuff. It was great. We were having the high life. It was the .com era and things were going up and I was saying, this is cool. You know, I didn't engage in my culture, but there was one thing that annoyed me. Whenever I went into a meeting, people would look at me and they'd look at me with this strange little twist on their eyes when this brown guy walked in the door. In the internet industry, when I first got into it, about 2000, there were 4 Māori in the whole of Auckland, or the whole of the industry that I knew of. There were only 4 of us. And so when I would walk in, they would look here and sort of have this strange look, and I always didn't like that look. That look was sort of like, what's this guy know about the internet? He doesn't look the right colour to know anything about technology. And so I brushed that aside, but I took that personally. So I set some goals. The first goal was, when I leave this room, they are going to know my name. Second one is, they're going to know that I know more about the internet than they do. And the third one is, I'm going to make them laugh. Because if you want to tell the truth to people, and you don't want to offend them, then you've got to make them laugh. And so I wanted them to laugh. And that's important, because laughter is a powerful tool to me. So then my nanny looked at me and she says, you need to come home. I went, come home? I'm living a good life. Everything's going great for me. I don't want to be around all those Maoris, my cousins. You see, because then I'd have to give up all of this stuff and I'd have to live on the marae. The marae is where our ancestral gathering places. I'm like, oh man. So I said no. I ignored her for 6 months, and then nothing went right in my life. Everything started to fall apart, and I was like, what's going on? And then that voice came back and says, you need to come home. And then one day, I was in the kitchen and my young daughter came out. It was in the morning and she woke up, she came into the kitchen and she said, Dad, I had a dream. She was 5. I said, oh, what was that? And she said, I had a dream. All these old ladies were walking down the driveway and they had all these drawings on their chin and they said they're coming to take me home. Well, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. And then I heard that voice of my nanny who said, you need to come home. And it was about a week or 2 later we moved. We packed everything up and we went back to our village. Our little village is called Wharatini. And I gave up that life. Gave up technology and I just lived and breathed and decolonized. See, so I didn't know what decolonization was. I didn't know what colonization was. So I began to decolonize. Within the first 14 months of living back on the village, I attended 12 funerals. Tangi, we'd call them. Tangi is the word for cry. I attended 12 tangi. And of those 14 funerals, only 2 died from natural causes. The rest of them died car accidents, there was murder, there was suicides, and the suicides were male men over the age of 30. There were abnormal health conditions. So all of a sudden I was thrust into the reality of what it meant to be Māori and Indigenous in this world, far removed from the city that I had lived, where everything was so was so pampered and life was so good and the cafes were a great life. And so all of a sudden I met all my aunties and my nannies and my cousins, and I met my tipuna, my ancestors, and I met myself. And then I thought, now I know why I have felt empty all my life. Now I feel full again. And then my nanny says, okay, now that you've got that sorted out, you were sent away to learn so that you can bring what you have learned back for us as a people. What have you learned? And so I realized, okay, maybe there was a point to me going and learning the internet, learning technology. What can I do? I just do a PowerPoint presentation, right? So everything starts in PowerPoint, I see. So that was the first thing I did, was I did a PowerPoint presentation because we had a lot of history and it was written and there were papers and books and there was all sorts of stuff. And I was like, oh, this is too much information. I want to simplify it. So that was the first step in digitization. So we got all that, we digitized it, and I put it into a small little PowerPoint presentation, 70 pages long, the summary of our history. And now that was available online anyway. So that was my first experience of digitization. Now, you mentioned earlier, I didn't get paid for all this. In fact, I ended up spending probably more of my own money and effort and resources to do this than getting paid for it. Some ways I felt that gave more integrity to what I was doing. I didn't feel like I was compromised. But I tell you what, it was hard to eat, and my kids had to go without. But we always had stuff. Stuff came, food came. So that was good to us. So I brought technology together and we began this process of digitization. In the digitization, there was so much learning that we had and experiences that we received, and question marks. Lots of questions about what does all this stuff mean. So now I'm got the background out of the way. I want to go into a couple of key points. First of all, I think of myself a little bit on two different worlds, right? So part of my background is a negotiator for our tribe for our treaty settlement process. I helped edit the constitution for the redefinition of our sovereignty in a modern context. And so of that, we did research. We looked at constitutions from all over the world throughout history. And the one that we connected with the most was the Haudenosaunee and the Confederacy Constitution. And the reason I got to that was because when I was studying the American Constitution, they said that they went to the Confederacy to figure out how to create a democratic sort of governance structure. And I was like, that's the way to do it. So underpinning this entire empire, if that's the right word here, I'm talking about the United States, underpinning this was an Indigenous framework. And I thought, I like that, I need to know this. Why don't I know this? And why don't other people know this? Someone should tell people about this. And so that was my job for our iwi. So on top of all of those things there, protecting what's cultural is important to me. But teaching what's cultural is important to me. Sharing it is important to me. But making sure that it's not abused is important to me. That's a lot of horses to be riding at one time, especially when you can only hop on one at a time. So trying to figure that out, how will that work too. Just in the way of trademarks, so this is, I don't know if you can read this. This word is a Māori word, it says wai, and that says fi, Wi-Fi. So I trademarked this, Wi-Fi. It is what it sounds like. We've connected what we call 50 marae, which are our ancestral homes up and down the east coast, the most rural, most environmentally difficult area in New Zealand, where a lot of our people live. We got them all connected to the internet. And so I came up with this term Wi-Fi as my sort of trademark for that process. The second one that I have now is Aotearoa. So I'm in the IT space. And so I thought, well, how cute would that be if I could do Aotearoa instead of Aotearoa. Aotearoa is the name of New Zealand in Māori. And so I did Aotearoa. So I went through the process where I submitted the names because I wanted to see what would happen if I did that. Aotearoa, sent it through, it went to the group who, went to the company's office. They then sent it to the advisory board who then looked at it, and like 4 months later they came back and says, yeah, it's approved. And I'm like, oh, that was easy. Didn't even ask me about it. And the same with Wi-Fi. So for me it's important, how are these terms, how do they decide whether they could do this, who decided they could do this. I had no idea. I have them trademarked now, so what do I do with them now? Another part of what I'm about is how do we commercialize our culture with integrity so that others don't take advantage of it, but that we can benefit from the value of what we have already. And this is where we get to the point. So for me, if Huritia, can I ask you to scroll right down to the bottom? I'm not going to read all of that because you can go and get that online. Come up a little. Okay, slow down. Up more, up more, up more, up more, up more. Okay, down here. That's it. So we have what we call the Treaty of Waitangi. Treaty of Waitangi says, hey, we'll do business with you Māoris. We'll give you some rights. You give us some land. Well, I didn't say that, but that was what they were thinking. And in return, we'll all live happily ever after. Well, no one ever lived happily ever after. Point in case is that we live in a place called Turanganui-a-Kiwa, and that's where Captain Cook first came to New Zealand, and he killed several Māori as a way of introducing himself. And he decided this didn't go off the way that I thought it was, so he hopped on his boat and took off, and he decided as his parting gift to us, as the first meeting of the English and Māori, was that he'd give us a name. And so he called the name of our area Poverty Bay, and we've lived under that yoke ever since. And so it's one that we're still seeking now to change. Back to the point. What we've done now with this treaty, and we're still settling our treaty, is that I'm putting a claim together, a clause to be added and included in the legislation. No one's done this yet, and I don't know if I can or not, but I don't care, because I'm going to put it in anyway. I'm not looking for anyone's permission to do it. This is what Tinorangatīratanga or sovereignty means. This is our condition. So negotiation for me is not about saying, I'll give up this, you give up. We gave up all. This is not about me saying I'm giving up any more. This is about you learning to take what I think is important and changing the way you do business. And so for me, the point or the area that I'm most passionate about is internet. We have human rights, right? So what's a human right? Okay, I'm going to get class participation here. What's one of the most important fundamental human rights that we all have? Fresh water. Water. What's another one? Life. Another one? What about this? Is everyone entitled to shelter and clothing? Right, so if we just look at some of those, I think of those, there's one more to me that is just as vital as a human right, and that's access to the internet. Now, I think the internet can change lives, it can change worlds, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that with what I do now. So, as a part of that principle, we're putting in a clause. This is the clause that we're putting together. First of all, that we claim the right to undisturbed rights to collect, store, and utilize iwi. Iwi means tribe. So, to collect, store, and utilize iwi citizen digital information and data without prejudice, without fear of unwarranted, meaning without our permission, intercept, access, and data mining by the New Zealand government, and the right to seek penalties and compensation for breaches. We have none of those privileges right now. No one has those privileges that I know of right now, except for Iceland. And maybe there are some tribes that have got some special provisions, but we want to legislate this and put it specific. Recognition of tribal or iwi digital information and data as taonga or treasure under Article 2 of the Treaty of Waitangi. Now, it's Te Tiriti o Waitangi, which is the Māori version of the treaty. A lot of the English say the Treaty of Waitangi, but that's the English version. Of course, there's two different versions. The Māori one is the one that we hold to, not the English one, because the definitions changed. And when the definitions change, the entire treaty changed with it. So under Te Tiriti o Waitangi, with its associated rights, privileges, and protections, i.e. that the database's narrative of aggregation and social linkage provided a powerful cultural symbol of an integrated, dependent, and a modern people. The way that our iwi connect to each other, our whakapapa, our genealogy, it's digital as well, our digital whakapapa. So when you Facebook friend me, we've now created a digital whakapapa of links and connections where we share expressions and feelings and thoughts. At a cultural level, we've never not done that. We've always done that. So we're doing that in the digital space. That needs to be protected. The next one here is the right to refuse police or court subpoena to access and use tribal data. That's it. You know, we're not arguing. We want to say no. We don't want you to access it. We don't want you to access it. You know, it's our right, it's our atonement, that's our treasure. This also includes things, as we'll get on to here, about DNA. The next one, the right to store iwi data anywhere the iwi chooses. This is a bit of a tricky one. I'm sort of thinking that if iwi information is on Facebook, can I have a clause that I can give to Facebook to say, if it's tagged with metadata without iwi, that they have a little enclave within Facebook's servers and data centers just for the tribal information that no one is allowed to access? Wow, that'd be great if we could do that. I think Facebook would like that because they have no option. Now they have to release whatever they're requested. Independent right to protect and use the transmission, collection, storage and protection of digital identities and data bank in the form of genealogies, DNA, genomic information, medical information, cultural IP, social communications, rungwa information and other cultural, economic or social data. Rungwa is health knowledge, really, plants and inherent medicinal qualities within those. So we want the right to protect and use, now this is an important part, the collection. So at the point of collection, so in the digital context, that's usually a browser or a mobile phone. As soon as we hold up my phone and I take a selfie, I've now collected information in this room, us, and I've digitized it on my phone. And then once it's digitized, it gets sent through the internet and it goes into a data center and it's stored there. So I want to protect the point of creation, the transmission, and the storage of that. And that whole process is iwi space. And it's got a private, what we call a virtual private network from all of that, which no one is allowed access to. Now, the reasons why is because we're collecting all this information. We worked with the University of Otago to collect the digital DNA samples of, the DNA samples of 200 tribal men that we've now digitized, and it's sitting within the university's data bank. They're very uncomfortable with it being there. They don't want it there, which is a good position for them to be in because they shouldn't be comfortable with it. They want to put it somewhere, but we have nowhere to put it yet. So that's a question that we have to really answer quickly. The next one we have here, the right to establish engagement protocols for information. Can you pull it up, please? Okay. Yeah. Okay. The right to establish engagement protocols for information requested by government departments and services to ensure the beneficial value to iwi members and not to disadvantage them in any way. Right, we've got this thing called Real Me, which is the New Zealand government's digital persona of each of us. And they'll says here, you're all these different identities, but in the government now we can bring all those identities together, your health information and your social services and your tax, and now you're this one real me. All right, so what I'm saying is that when we create our digital identities, that we need to have the ability to create protocols for that engagement of what you have access to of my identity. I believe that it's the tribe's opportunity to establish a digital identity that will engage with your government identity and provide protections around them. So this is artificial intelligence stuff. You know, there's 3 identities that we have. 4. Let me say that, 4. First one is you have a government identity, which is the sum of all of your recorded information at a government level on databases everywhere. New Zealand is saying, let's pull all that information together so we've got a virtual version of you now. We know everything about your history because we know when you were born, we know what you've done at school, we know what your health situation is. So that's your first virtual identity. And it's forced on us essentially, really. You know, like we were saying before, I didn't ask to be part of New Zealand government. My parents registered me. So what about the other identities that we have? You have your physical identity now, which is you. You have your tribal identity as well. You know, I'm a member of 6 different tribes. I used to work on the database for our 2nd largest tribe, so I understood what was in there, and how I was perceived. And it was weak. It didn't have very much information about me. So how is it going to be able to support me, particularly with distribution processes from the benefits of its contracts with government and its settlement process? If it doesn't identify me, how can it support me? So that was a challenge. And then the third one is that you're the sum of all the information that the internet has of you, whether it's in Google, Facebook, and Snapchat or whatever. Marketing companies know more about you than you know about yourself. Just imagine if they pull all that information together and created a virtual you that became aware of itself and it became aware of you living outside of itself. Now there's some crazy stuff. Thankfully I'm quite comfortable with crazy stuff. So, this is a step. One of the things which I've heard a lot here is about sovereignty. And what does it mean to be sovereign? What does it mean to make your own decisions and choices and to determine your future? Well, it's by making decisions, first of all, and not seeking permission, except from, first of all, mana atua. So this is how I qualify sovereignty. Mana atua. That means the power that's given by the Creator. No government can give or take that from me. Only the Creator himself. So I get my first power from him. Second one is mana whenua, the land, the mountains, the caves where the bones of my ancestors are, that I can go and visit now. Then there is mana whakapapa, the lineage of my ancestors that have come down and have shared all of their culture with me. And then we have mana rangatira, the line of the chiefs, mana tipuna. Oh, I've mentioned tipuna. Final one for me is ringakaha. Ringakaha means a strong arm. With all that we have, it's those who take what's our right, who have what's our right. I'm not asking for the government's permission to do anything that I do. I'm claiming it because there is no mana government on any of my list of definitions of sovereignty in my life. It's a partnership relationship where we will work as one for our benefits, but these are my terms. And so what I'm presenting to you today is sort of an introduction to some of what we're looking at when it comes to the virtual space. Let me lead with this final point, and while I do that, can you bring up, yep, scroll right up. Oh, actually go to the first tab, and then scroll up. So, oh, no, scroll down, sorry. Keep going, stop. Next one down. Yeah, that's one. You can click on that. So this is what I do on my days off. And in the IT space, I'm around electricity a lot, so I need to ground myself. And so in order to ground myself, can you click on this little icon down there? I'm rebuilding what we call a power site. Can you use the arrow buttons on the keyboard to move up and down? I'm rebuilding this power site, which was the ancient power site of my ancestors. And the name of my ancestor was Whirikoka. And Whirikoka had a pet seal. And his pet seal died in this area. And as the sun beat down on the black blubber of the seal, it melted it, and that seeped into the earth. And that's how our ancestors explained why there's oil underneath our area here. We had Tag Oil and Apache come and try to take that oil out of our ground. Tell everybody about this stuff. They tried to take the oil out. They came and consulted with us, and we says, no, we don't give you permission. And they says, well, the government does, so we've done our bit. We've consulted, now we'll carry on. And so he says, well, here's our promise to you. Nothing good will come of you and of it if you try to take the blood of Kekino, which is the name of our seal, from out of the ground. So they began drilling, and as they drilled, they hit these gas pockets which began to explode, and it began to destroy their equipment. So they had to take a bit of a step back and rethink what they were doing, and then they tried again, and the same thing happened. And he says, that's not the worst of what would come if you carry on taking from our whenua, our lands, those things that are not yours. So they carried on doing it. Right, within 3 months of them continuing, the oil industry started to hit a low. I think it was at $100 a barrel, and then it plummeted. Now fracking is expensive, and so you have to have high profit margins to get some value out of it. But as those profit margins started to cut down from $100 a barrel down to 50, down to 40, once they were 30, there were fracking companies started to become bankrupt. The final part of that, and I'm not saying it's a part of what they've done to us or because of us, but I say it's a warning to them that the godfather of the fracking industry, the man who thought up the idea and commercialized it, they found him dead in his car, which had plowed into the side of a bridge last year, right at the peak of the bankruptcies. It's not over because they're looking to come back, but there's a power that we have within our culture, and that power is coming back. The restoration of the old ways and the traditions are coming back. How do we take that and how do we use that with the integrity that we need to teach ourselves and our people and to show the beauty of what we have is the question. I can only be true to what I've been given, the gifts of the Pākehā world or the European world with the heart of the Māori world. So Huritia, can you just click at the door and spin it around? So with the technologies that our white brothers have created, we're now claiming back our own history so that we can walk through those things. I never lived on my village, and I know many thousands of my own who don't, but I'll take my village to them. And that's what I see technologies can do for us today. But we need to have the legislations and the laws to protect our right to this digital information, and that's where I'm laying it at your feet now. So the challenge is, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a bush lawyer. I'm very familiar with the other side of the law, but you're put in this place and position for a reason now. Now we have to take ownership. If we don't own our digital futures and our digital identities, someone else will do it for us. You can't stop it. Yeah. We need to be the ones that create the content with the integrity, distribute that content, store that content, and we need to make it immersive. The very last thing I'll say now, right? We have a statue in my marae, and it is of a chief's head with eels for hair. Lots and lots of eels. And it was a gift given by the Kohanga Reo movement, which is our language nest movement. And the symbol of what that represents is that the eel can be found in every creek, every brook, every river within New Zealand. It finds its way everywhere. And like the language will spread and go everywhere. And that's what I believe we're all here to do, is to help spread all the traditions, cultures, all of the information that we have to the world. And so I welcome you to Pākeke o Whirikoka, the place of my ancestors, where my tipuna slept within this restored whare, and invite you to come and visit with us anytime. So thank you for your time. Kia ora. I have one last request. I need a selfie for the Facebook page. You already got makeup all on. Is everyone comfortable with it? Anyone uncomfortable with being in my selfie? No? Good. Okay, ready?
It's called group.
We've got to get that flag in there too. Okay, on the count of three, say, tino rangatiratanga. 1, 2, 3.
Tino rangatiratanga.
Thank you very much.